Hey guys, Ducky here. Recently, I've been thinking about how many competitive card games there are, and how difficult it must be for some people to really land on one they enjoy. The struggle with playing any sort of competitive trading card game is that they come with quite the commitment. To be even somewhat good at any of these games, you need to invest a lot of time in playing the game just to mechanically be decent. Then you need to study the metagame so you know what each deck is capable of doing and what cards to look out for. And finally, most people, including myself, need to invest a decent amount of money into paying for the meta decks just to be able to compete. Recently, Konami just announced the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel game, which is something I am really hyped for, and 100% will be streaming over on the Twitch channel when it comes out, so go follow me over there. However, other than the fact that it will be using the cards from the TCG pool, and actually using the modern rules, not much else has really been mentioned regarding how the actual collecting of cards will go. And this got me thinking about how other online card games go about their services. So, I decided I'd make this new series. Card game. Is it worth your time?
Hi, if this is your first time here, I'm Roguelike Duck. I've been playing card games competitively since about 2013. I've mostly been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd say Yu-Gi-Oh! Is my main game, but I've tossed in turns with other games as well. Like, I played a lot of Hearthstone, invested way too much time and money into Hearthstone. I played Magic, Pokemon, I've tried basically all of the digital card games that are out. So my goal here is to help you make an educated decision on what card game is going to be right for you, what's going to be worth your time, what's going to be worth your hard-earned dollar as well, because these games can get quite expensive. So hey, if you like this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe and keep notified when I make new videos.
I'm going to do this by breaking down 3 different categories and discussing them. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is single player content. Then I'm going to discuss how pay to win the game is versus free to play. And finally, I want to talk about the different types of formats you can expect when actually playing these games. So, today's game in question is Hearthstone. I started playing Hearthstone just before its 4th expansion, the Grand Tournament, and at that time there was only 2 single-player expansions. You had Naxxramas and Blackrock Mountain. Then also, you had the core set, and a second set, Goblins and Gnomes. At the time, Hearthstone was an interesting take on the card game formula. It was comparable to Magic the Gathering in the way that cards required mana to be used. There were different card pools for different classes, but it was at the same time really unique and made good use of the fact that it was a digital card game by adding interesting mechanics that would basically be impossible to pull off if it was in a physical game. Each class has very distinct and unique playstyles, so for example, the Mage class is quite spell-focused, whereas Hunter is quite an aggressive class. One mechanic that was introduced in the League of Explorers expansion that's a good example of how Hearthstone took advantage of its digital medium was the Discover mechanic. Well, this was one of my favorite mechanics when it was introduced, as it allowed you to select from 1 out of 3 cards in a certain category. Before this mechanic was introduced, there was no real way to actually toolbox your deck, and it made the game feel very RNG reliant. When Discover was added to the game, and more Discover cards were added in future expansions, it finally felt like you had control over the direction the match was going. Albeit, a lot of the earlier Discover cards were still very based on RNG. So, Discover a random dragon meant that you were choosing from 1 out of 3 dragons in a card pool of a lot of dragons, but having 3 options of cards that could help shape out future turns was really handy and it helped with a lot of strategy.
Now, all cards on the table, I've never hit Legend rank. When I do sweat out the game and play competitively, I go within the top 5 ranks and kind of lose interest in how grindy it gets, and that's just me. But when it comes to the actual how it feels to play standard, long-term competitively, make sure you stick around towards the end of the video where I will give you my thoughts and opinions on how it is actually playing it competitively, at least how it is for me.
For now, let's jump into single-player content. Hearthstone is a great baseline to look at when it comes to online collectible card games, and what content is available for players to sink their teeth into. When it comes to learning a new card game, I think that having good single-player content is a must. Over the years, I believe the available single-player content has improved a lot for Hearthstone, and I'll explain why. In the earlier years of Hearthstone, you had paid expansions that would offer you new cards as you progressed through the story, and progression was based on you building a deck to take on these challenges. It was really enjoyable, and taking on these levels on harder difficulties was fun as well, but these adventures were unavailable to free-to-play players, and even if they bought it, it could be difficult for them if they didn't have decent decks to actually challenge the bosses. Newer single-player content makes use of a sort of drafting system where after each level you gradually build a deck by selecting certain booster packs for the deck. This new system made it accessible for free-to-play players, so they didn't need a pre-built deck, and it was really interesting for new and existing players. I remember the first few times they made the dungeon run format, I really enjoyed myself. I spent a bit of time playing it, and I found it really fun. Eventually, I would end up playing ranked again, but in retrospect, I think it was a great way for new players to get more experience playing the game without being forced to actually play against experienced players.
As far as single-player content goes, I think Hearthstone knocks it out of the park.
Pay to win versus free to play. As with all card games, there is a metagame. In a physical card game, these metas are usually what causes cards to spike and drop in price based on the popularity and power of given cards. Since Hearthstone is an online game and there's no third-party market, this isn't something you have to worry about. However, it doesn't make it entirely not pay to win. There are different rarity cards in the game: common, rare, epic, legendary. These cards can be neutral, so that means any class can use it, or they can be restricted to a specific class. This means if you're playing a Shaman deck and you pull a legendary Druid card, you're not playing that legendary in your Shaman deck. It's a Druid-only card. These legendary cards are really powerful most of the time, and can actually shape your deck as well. A lot of decks are built around certain mechanics from legendary cards, and they're quite rare as well, as you can imagine.
And this is where I think Hearthstone gets the balance quite right, though.
If you wanted to make a meta deck, you have the ability to disenchant cards you don't want or need for crafting material, and then you can use this crafting material to make any cards you want, given that you have enough of it. It's entirely possible to disenchant every card from classes you're not interested in, and then using that crafting material to make the cards you actually want. On top of that, there are daily quests that offer you in-game gold that you can use to purchase packs entry into the arena, which we will talk about soon, and a battle pass that gives decent free rewards. Finally, every week you can participate in a tavern brawl, which is a PvP event that just has like some sort of crazy modifier, and it provides a free pack for your first win. Hearthstone does a really good job at rewarding free-to-play players with ways to balance the playing field with paid players, as long as they're willing to grind for it. With so much time between new expansions and new packs, it's entirely possible for them to build a really decent meta deck before needing to grind for new cards. Finally, let's talk about formats. Let's start with the base game, and then we'll get into everything else, because there's actually quite a few formats you can choose from in Hearthstone. So first of all, you have normal Hearthstone ranked and casual gameplay, and it's split into two different types of formats. You have standard, which is the most recent sets in rotation from the current year and the year before, and then you have wild, which is essentially an unrestricted, the card pool is every card since the game's conception. It's just insanity. I've always played standard since I've been a cross between pay to win and free to play. Since I've started playing, I've always just made a habit of disenchanting any cards that get rotated out, and then using that crafting material towards making my next meta deck. I have friends who have played wild but choose to play standard instead. Wild just sounds exactly as it suggests, wild. I don't think I've ever seen a balance patch dedicated to wild balancing. To be honest, I don't think the team behind Hearthstone even cares about it. It's chaos and it's fine. All balance patches I've seen are catered towards standard play, and the competitive play is centered around standard as well. Seasons are monthly, so you grind up your rank every month, grind to legendary month, if that's your cup of tea. I enjoyed playing standard rank on my off time for a while, until they introduced skill-based matchmaking. I've never played an online card game with a ranked mode featuring skill-based matchmaking. They could put skill-based matchmaking in unranked, I don't care. But when seasons reset and you get put back to the worst rank, you have to grind back up from the worst rank. Why would you want to be versing sweaties or matched skill in the worst rank? As an example, if I haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for a few months and I end up being reset to bronze, and I want to get out of bronze quickly, I just play a few games in bronze, beat a bunch of bronze players, and get out of bronze. In Hearthstone, I'm not versing bronze players, I'm versing players catered to my skill level. This, to me, defeats the purpose of even having a rank. Why should every one of my games be challenging at a low rank? I believe that games should be challenging at the rank that I belong. My very first game I played of ranked when recording gameplay for this video, on the last day of July's season, I was paired up against someone with legend sleeves, sleeves you can only get from hitting the highest rank, which is legend. Why am I versing them at literally the worst rank I could be? Yeah, I won that match, but it doesn't make sense to me that I'm versing someone so skilled at the worst rank in the game. Not to mention, you're not shown the rank of the opponent you're versing either, so you have no idea how balanced the system is. For all I know, this player could be in gold or diamond. Now, some of you may think that this is a small gripe, or even disagree with the sentiment, and if that's the case, let me know in the comments. But I for one think it's a dumb system, and it defeats the purpose of even having a ranked mode. But moving on from that point entirely, an alternative to ranked, which is great if you're a new or free-to-play player, is the arena. The arena is essentially a draft mode. You draft your 30 card deck from a selection of 3 random cards 30 times. You can pay entry of either 150 gold or real money. Your rewards get better the more rounds you win. It's a fun mode, and some people prefer it to normal ranked. It is what it is, you either like it or you don't. Past arena is Duels. From my understanding, Duels is basically like the single-player dungeon runs I was talking about earlier, but it's PvP. Interesting concept, it's the newest game mode to be introduced, but I haven't seen anyone selectively become a dedicated Duels player. Hey, but it's nice it's there. Finally, there's Battlegrounds. And I saved Battlegrounds for last because personally this is the game mode I actually come back to Hearthstone for. It's an auto chess battler. You've probably seen them around, there's been a League of Legends one. But in my opinion, this is the best of its kind. I think that Blizzard are realizing that as well because they're starting to add cosmetics to the mode specifically that you can pay for with real money. So the fact that they're putting that in, I think they're starting to realize that more people are playing Hearthstone just for the Battlegrounds mode. And if you're into auto chess, it's definitely worth checking out. There's a lot of great depth to it, and I personally enjoy the hell out of it. I have several replays on the channel from when I used to actually stream Battlegrounds, and I think it's worth your time. Battlegrounds is entirely free to play. Even accessing the perks can be done with the in-game currency you earn from just playing.
So that's my in-depth analysis on Hearthstone. And like I said earlier, I think Hearthstone is a good benchmark for what you should expect from your digital card games. It's not a perfect game by any means, and I think the meta for Standard gets stale really quickly, especially when there's so much time between new expansions and new balance patches. It can get really boring playing the same deck or versing the same decks repetitively for months at a time, grinding back up to Legend every single format. And that's kind of the reason primarily I don't play Hearthstone as much as I used to. You can argue it's that way for a lot of games at the moment, especially Duel Links has been really bad with some of the metas recently as well. But it became really noticeable for Hearthstone when I could jump back in with the same deck, not really need any new cards. Months later, I jumped on to record gameplay for this video, and I just continued using a deck that I made last time I played months ago, and my very first match was a mirror match with that deck. But Battlegrounds is always fun, so in my opinion, that makes Hearthstone worth checking out all on its own.
You're doing great out there!
Let's go, boys! Let's fucking go! Let's go! Easy fucking first place. Easy claps, boys. Easy claps. Nothing to it, boys. Nothing to it. What can I say? What can I say? But is this worth you actually dedicating your time and money to? For me, I don't really think so. This is off script right now, but I just remembered. I didn't write this in the script, so hey, I just remembered this. But I was trying to figure out how you actually get into the competitive scene for Hearthstone. Because for example, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links holds the Kyber Corp Cup every so often. And you can get your invite to higher events just inside the app itself. But in all my time playing Hearthstone, I've never seen anything for the competitive scene, but I know that there's a competitive scene, so I looked it up, and it looks like there's an external app or scheduling system that you have to do. There are events. They said it's through Battlefy, and you schedule it up with your opponents, and then that gets you into the future leagues. In my opinion, I'm glad it's there. It's not as simple as it could be to actually get people going from, hey, I'm playing a lot of ranked, to, hey, now I'm playing in the competitive scene. It's kind of out of the way. Not only that, I don't know if you have to be signed with any teams or anything. I haven't looked into it that much, but it looks like you have to go out of your way to get into it. It's there. There is a competitive scene. It looks like it's accessible, but it's just not as accessible as other card games. So if you're like me and you really like getting into the competitive scene of these games, that's something to consider as well. You do have to go out of your way and schedule it externally off the app.
If you have made it this far into the video, please consider liking and let me know in the comments below what game you want me to check out next and talk about next. Follow me on all social media at RoguelikeDuck. I'm out. Peace.